Yeah. So first off, I just want to thank all the subscribers. Thank you guys for fucking with me. Appreciate that. So it's Saturday, so we're gonna keep it light. Today I want to talk about my opinion of Saul Goodman from Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad, the Breaking Bad universe. Now, I think Saul Goodman has the most characteristics of cats from the streets on that show, because you have Walt, who became a big time drug dealer, and but at times he like you gotta remember he started off as a square ass teacher and shit, and quickly ascended to that top spot, which is unlikely in the streets. You know what I mean? So, but he had a few characteristics, but um, it was some of it was just like too quick. That shit ain't gonna happen. You had Mike, who was the next cop, so nah, that's a strike rate like that off the bat. Hell nah. You had Hank, who was DEA, and you had Jesse Pinkman, who was a dope head with nice teeth, which is weird. And fucking, they should have really like did work on his teeth to make it look worse, because he smoked a gang of meth like a motherfucker, and he had a lot of remorse, and that's unusual on the streets until later. You know what I mean? Until way later. But he had that shit like right away. So you have those cats, and then you had Saul Goodman. Saul Goodman was like, I wouldn't say I know one person that or a few people like Saul Goodman, but I know people that have a lot of the traits that he has. And we'll start from the beginning. So in the beginning, as a kid, this fool's stealing from his parents. Like at a young age, he's already doing like fucked up shit. By the time he becomes a early adult, he's already going in and out of jail. That, which is similar to a lot of people on the streets. And then he tries to do good. Now, he's trying to make his family proud. You know what I mean? And and I know a lot of people like that. They're like, fuck it, I'm gonna do good. I get out, I'm gonna do good. Like, I ain't going back. When I talk to people like, you stay out this time? Like, yeah, for sure, I ain't going back. So you'll hear that a lot. Like, they want to do good, but there's always something that prevents them from doing good. And that's because when times get hard, they don't know what to do. And that's Saul Goodman. Like, he really tried to do well, and him finding out that his brother was kind of a dick, that really fucked with him. you know so yeah, so what ends up happening is, like, his brother doesn't believe in him, and his brother doesn't think he should be a lawyer, and he sabotaged his whole career the whole time, like kept him as a public pretender and shit, or instead of joining like a real firm. So after a while, he just, like, they just got into it, and Sal's the kind of guy, and this is one thing that I see a lot in people on the streets. He's the kind of guy that will risk everything to prove a point. Like, for real, I know a lot of motherfuckers like that. They're like, I don't give a fuck if I do 30, 40 years. I'm going to show these motherfuckers I ain't the one. Like, you don't come at me like that, right? Like, instead of just thinking it out and like, nah, hell nah. Sal had to prove a point. So he had to fucking, sabotage his brother and shit, and that shit cost him like a motherfucker. He ends up getting disbarred and all that shit, right? And fucking, yeah, so he, like, even then, instead of just saying, you know what, maybe I took this shit too far, like, that fool ends up, like, saying, hell nah, I still gotta prove my point, ends up pushing that shit even further. Like, his brother was an asshole too, because his brother had a lot of pride. So, like, Chuck was a fucking dick. So instead of just saying, like, nah, I'm gonna leave it alone, that fool ends up causing his brother to kill himself and shit. So, like, that fool loses everything, and still he's like, all that does is make him a little bit more heartless and shit. And I know cats like that on the streets, they lose a lot. Like, they don't have shit. Like, it's like, I don't have nothing. Like, I lost it all, and fucking, so they have nothing to lose. That's what they feel, right? So that's one way I see characteristics, certain characteristics in Sal. Uh, Other characteristics I see in him is his, like, he's real charismatic. Like, he's real slick when he talks, like he could spit game like a motherfucker. Like, oh shit, don't even like anything that happens, he could turn that shit around. He could make it seem like, don't worry, I got this shit under control. And I see a lot of that. There's cats out there who weren't always like the toughest, the strongest. And you know what? I'm not gonna lie. I think when I was in YA, like I had a little bit of these traits, especially that one where it's like I wasn't the strongest, I wasn't the toughest, but I used my mind a lot, and I talked a certain way that kind of pumped shit up, and at times kind of put me on the better end of situations. You know what I mean? So that's kind of how Sal is, and but he's very charismatic. He's funny. He just like he could talk himself out of anything, right? So, and like I said, I know a lot of cats like that. Another thing is he cannot, for some reason, he just can't stay like on the good, like on a good route. Like he has to do crooked shit. Like no matter what, he has to have his hand in something that's crooked. And like man, like that reminds me of my pops. My pops was like that. My pops, he would always like he could have a good job, but he always had to have a side hustle. Always like he was a fool like that. He could never just like even if he found something legit, and there were angles where like, oh shit, they're selling it for this. I could take a few, sell it for this, and still make profit. And like he would always do something where he could come out on top. So that Sal Goodman had a lot of that, right? So the thing about Sal though is he had too many qualities, or too many characteristics, I should say, from people on the streets that often like were the worst traits in people. So what ended up happening is he did something that I see a lot of people do, that I think fucked them up, and it fucked him up. And like he relied too heavily on other people to do the heavy lifting. So I know a lot of cats out there who they relied on people to take them to that next level. So they're like, oh, I'm with him, and they're always doing that, like, oh, that's my boy right there, like I'm rolling with this fool. So it's like they're trying to build a reputation. My bad. They're trying to build a reputation by being associated with this guy rather than doing it themselves, right? So that's how Saul Goodman was. He was like, I'm connected to these people, and he connected himself to Walt, and that was a bad idea because that was a sinking ship. And in the end, it cost him everything. Like he lost everything. He had to go into he had to change his identity, and run. Like, and you see a lot of that where cats just bite off more than they could chew, and they get involved in the wrong people, and next thing you know, they're like, oh fuck, they have no other choice, they feel, so that's what happened to Saul. And I'm curious to see what's gonna happen, because there's still some story to tell with him, to see where it goes. But in my experience, cats that have too many of those characteristics, it never ends well for them. But yeah, that's my opinion of Saul Goodman. I think at times he could be a scumbag. At times, he could be manipulative, and there are other times where he'll always look out for those that he really loves. The only problem is he ends up fucking shit up in a way where there's less and less of those people in his life as he goes along. So yeah, that's my opinion of him. And with that said, I'm out. Peace.